Minecraft horror story. The blood moon during eclipse. The sun was still above the desert when every shadow turned the wrong way. Steve stood on the roof of the Red Mesa Observatory and watched his shadow stretch east, then north, then straight toward his own boots. The square sun had not moved. It hung at midday in a clear blue sky. Yet the light around the observatory grew weak, as if evening were falling from all four sides at once. Tessa lowered her spyglass. The eclipse is early. It should not start for another hour, Ram said. Oren checked the clock in his hand. Its pointer spun twice and stopped upside down. The four of them had climbed the mesa to watch a rare eclipse from the highest point in the region. Bram had built a redstone machine to record the change in light. Daylight sensors covered the roof. Copper wires led down to lamps around the desert village below. Tessa had mapped the path of the moon for weeks. Oren had mined the tinted glass for the viewing room. Steve had carried most of the stone up the long stairway. They expected a short, dark noon and perhaps a few confused mobs. They did not expect the moon to rise from beneath the sun. A black square appeared at the bottom edge of the light. It moved upward until it covered half the sun. The sky around it turned dark purple. Stars came out above the desert. Then the moon changed color. Red spread across its face like dye through water. In seconds, a blood-red moon sat in front of the sun, surrounded by a thin white ring. The eclipse became an open red eye above the world. Every daylight sensor on the roof broke at once. Glass cracked. Redstone lamps flashed in a wave from the observatory to the village. The desert wind stopped. A low horn sounded somewhere beyond the hills, though no raid bar appeared. Steve looked at the sky through tinted glass. That is not a normal eclipse. A drop of dark red rain struck the glass. Another hit Steve's shoulder. Then hundreds began falling. The rain moved slowly, thick enough to leave stains on stone. It should not have rained in the desert. No clouds covered the red moon. The drops came from clear air. Fog rose from the ground below. It rolled between the village houses, climbed the mesa path, and spread across the observatory roof. The fog was black at first. Red light filled it from within until the whole world looked like the inside of a furnace. Oren backed toward the stairs. We need to get inside. Red lightning struck the animal pen below. The bolt made no thunder. It hit with a dry crack. Every cow, sheep, and chicken within the fence vanished in white bursts. Fire spread across the wooden gate. A second bolt hit beside the village well. 2 villagers and an iron golem disappeared before they could move. Steve ran to the roof bell and pulled the rope. The bell gave one weak note. Villagers left the roads and hurried into houses. The red fog thickened. Something crawled out of it. At first, Steve thought it was a giant spider. Long black limbs moved over the desert on both sides of the mesa path. Then the center of the shape rose. A tall head leaned forward beneath a crown of horns. 2 red eyes opened. Above them was a huge split jaw, lined with bright red bars. A second curved mouth glowed under the first. The creature moved slowly on all fours, stopping whenever the blood moon brightened. It did not look toward the fleeing villagers. It looked up at Steve. Tessa pulled him away from the edge. Do not watch it. Too late. The creature stopped. Steve's sight filled with its face. The image flashed closer than the thing itself. red eyes and broken jaws covering the world. A strong slowness effect struck all four people on the roof. Their arms felt heavy, their boots dragged against the stone. Bram stared at the status mark above his pack. Why are we slow? The creature unfolded to its full height. Steve remembered the notes they had found in a ruined cabin 3 nights earlier. The book had used a hard name only twice, asphyxiation, beneath the name. The unknown writer had added a warning about a red form that came with a nightmare storm. It did not give 15 seconds. It gave 5. The ruined book called this faster red form asphyxiation, nightmare. "Run," Steve said. They reached the roof hatch on the count of 3. Oren climbed down. Tessa followed. At 5, the roar came. The whole mesa shook. The creature crossed the village road in a blur. Its slow crawl had been a trick. One moment it stood near the well. The next, its arms struck the observatory wall. Steve pushed Bram through the hatch and dropped after him. They fell into the viewing room as black fingers broke through the roof. Bram pulled an emergency lever. Iron shutters closed over the windows, pistons pushed blocks across the hatch. The room went dark, except for redstone torches. Something scraped over the shutters. "Lower bunker," Steve said. They descended 2 floors. The observatory had been built over an old mine, and Bram had turned the top chamber into a control room. Maps covered one wall. 4 redstone lines ran from a central panel toward marked points around the mesa. The observatory roof, the village well, the old quarry, and a ruined portal in the southern canyon. All 4 lines glowed red. Bram stared at them. "That should be impossible. I disconnected the outer relays yesterday." "What do they control?" Steve asked. "Nothing yet. They were meant to carry light readings back here." Tessa opened a chest beneath the map wall. It was empty except for a folded map and a book covered in red dust. "This was not here this morning," she said. The book had no title. Its first page showed a drawing of the eclipse. A red moon covered a black sun. 4 lines ran from the moon to the same 4 points marked on Bram's wall. The next page held a message. "When the covered sun sees its own blood, the storm will stay. Break the 4 red eyes before the ring closes." Oren looked at the glowing redstone. 4 red eyes. 4 relays. "Someone connected our machine to them," Bram said. Steve turned the page. It showed a simple picture of the horned creature crawling between the 4 sites. Under it were 6 words. "It will guard what keeps night alive." The observatory wall bent inward. Stone cracked above the map. One thin arm pushed through and felt across the room. It moved past Steve, touched the central panel, and closed around Bram's empty chair. Red lightning struck the roof. The bolt traveled down the copper frame of the observatory. Every redstone line flared. The chair in the creature's hand burst into fire. Tessa pointed at the roofline on the wall. "The first relay is directly above us." "Then we break it on the way out," Steve said. Bram took 4 potions of swiftness from a brewing stand and gave 1 to each person. They drank. Blue rings mixed with the grey slowness marks around their feet. The potions did not remove the weakness, but they let the group move at close to normal speed. Steve filled his pack with food, blocks, 2 water buckets, ender pearls, and a stack of arrows. Oren carried a diamond pickaxe. Tessa took the map and book. Bram packed redstone parts, copper rods, and a bundle of TNT. The creature pulled its arm back through the wall. The sudden silence was worse. They climbed to the viewing room. The roof hatch had been torn open. Red rain fell through the hole. Bram pointed to a narrow service ladder leading to the outer lens platform. "The roof relay is under the main sensor," he said. "If we break the red crystal in its center, the line should die." Oren went first. He reached the platform and swung his pickaxe at a glass box beside the lens. The box broke. Inside was a block none of them had placed there. It looked like red glass with a black eye trapped in the middle. The eye opened. Oren struck it once. A crack crossed the block. The horned creature rose behind the platform. Its arms had climbed both sides of the observatory without making a sound. Red eyes looked over the roof edge. Rain ran down its black face. "Oren!" Steve shouted. Oren turned. The face flashed across all of them. 5 seconds. Oren hit the block again. 4. The eye cracked deeper. 3. Tessa threw an ender pearl through the broken shutter and vanished from the room. 2. Bram jumped after her. 1. Oren broke the red block. The roof line on the map went dark. The creature roared. Oren tried to reach the hatch, but one long arm swept across the platform. It caught him and drove him through the glass lens. Oren fell into the viewing room with half a heart. Steve grabbed his chest plate and pulled him toward the outer window. Another arm struck through the floor. Steve threw his ender pearl. The world snapped away. He landed in the village road beside Tessa and Bram. Red fog covered the houses. The observatory tower stood above them, lit by the blood moon. Oren was not with Steve. An instant later, a white burst flashed inside the broken viewing room. Oren's diamond pickaxe fell through the window and landed in the road. The creature climbed onto the roof. Its head turned toward the 3 survivors below. Bram picked up the tool. One eye is dead. On the observatory wall, the first red line had gone dark. 3 lines still burned through the fog. The road changed before they could move. Red sand rose in small steps between the houses. The village well slid 10 blocks to the left, then 10 blocks back. Doors appeared where walls had been. Windows opened onto rooms that belonged in other homes. The storm was rebuilding the village around the 3 survivors. Steve picked up Oren's diamond pickaxe and handed it to Tessa. "You know the map. Lead us to the well." She looked at the moving buildings. "The map does not know this village anymore." Bram raised one of his copper rods. A red spark ran along it toward the north. "The relay gives off power. I can follow that." The creature dropped from the observatory roof. It landed on all of its limbs and began to crawl down the mesa road. It stopped every few steps, but only for a breath. Oren's death had changed it. Red lines now ran along its arms. Its jaws opened wider than before. Steve did not look directly at it. "How long until it leaves?" Tessa checked the notes in the red book. New words were appearing on the last page. "The first death feeds the storm. The hunt lasts twice as long. It may not leave until we break the relays," she said. They moved north through the village. Bram's copper rod pulled toward each turn like a compass. Red rain covered the road. It did not flow downhill. The drops gathered into thin lines that pointed toward the well. Villagers watched from dark windows. Some held blocks against their doors. Others stood still with their arms crossed, unable to understand what moved outside. Steve knocked on each door they passed and told them to stay inside, away from windows and copper. A child villager opened the door of the library. "The bell keeps ringing," he said. Steve listened. The village bell gave a soft note somewhere in the fog. It rang again after 5 seconds. "Who is pulling it?" Tessa asked. The child pointed behind them. The horned creature crouched beside the bell stand. One black finger pushed the bell. It watched the houses as the sound spread. Every villager inside became outlined with a pale glow. "It is finding them," Bram said. Steve took out his bow. "Get them below ground." The library had a trap door beneath the rug. Tessa opened it and found a small storage room. Steve and Bram went from house to house, leading villagers through rear doors while Tessa moved them into the shelter. They saved 12 before the creature rang the bell a third time. Red lightning fell on the far house. The roof and everyone beneath it vanished. The creature pushed the bell again. Steve shot through the bell rope. The bell fell from its stand and struck the road. The creature looked at him. Its face filled his sight. 5 seconds. "Well," Steve shouted. They ran. Grey slowness held their legs while the creature gained speed behind them. The well appeared through the fog. Red water filled it to the top. A dark eye moved far below the surface. 4 seconds. Tessa jumped in. 3. Bram placed copper rods around the stone rim. 2. Steve pulled an iron door from his pack and set it across the narrow road. 1. The roar hit. The creature reached the door and passed through it without slowing. Steve rolled behind the well. A black arm swept over the stones and cut the top from a house. Bram connected redstone dust between the copper rods. "I can make a cage, but I need lightning." "There is plenty of it," Steve said. He fired an arrow at the creature's upper jaw. The arrow did no damage. It did make the creature turn. Steve ran around the well, keeping the copper rods between them. The monster followed. Its hands struck close enough to remove blocks under his boots. Below the water, Tessa reached the second red eye. It had grown into the well wall. She swung Oren's pickaxe. The water became darker with each hit. Bram placed the last dust line. "Now!" Steve stepped inside the copper square. The creature lunged after him. Red lightning struck the tallest rod. The current moved through the dust and jumped between all 4 rods. The creature froze in the center. Red light ran across its body. For a moment, Steve saw many thin shapes under its skin, all reaching outward. The trap did not hurt it, it only held it. Tessa struck the eye one last time. The red block broke. Water burst from the well. Tessa rose with it and landed on the road. The red lines pointing north went dark. Far above, part of the blood moon lost its color. The creature tore free of the copper field. "Quarry!" Bram shouted. They ran for the old blacksmith shop. A tunnel under its furnace led toward the mine. Steve sealed the trapdoor after them with stone. The creature's hands struck the floor as they descended. The tunnel was only 2 blocks high. Bram had built it to move ore carts from the quarry to the village. Rails ran down a steep slope. 3 minute carts waited at the top. The survivors climbed in and released the brake. Their carts rolled into the dark. Red rain followed through cracks in the roof. Wherever a drop touched iron ore, the block glowed. The glow moved from block to block, keeping pace with the carts. Steve looked over his shoulder. The tunnel behind them was empty. Then two red eyes opened in the ceiling. The creature had pressed itself flat against the stone. It crawled above the rails, fast enough to keep up. Steve faced forward before the flash could start another 5-second count. The track passed a broken switch. Bram leaned from his cart and pulled the lever. A side rail turned. The first two carts went left. Steve's went right. "Steve," Tessa called. His cart left the main tunnel and dropped down an old mining slope. He tried to brake, but the lever had snapped away. The cart rushed through cobwebs and jumped a missing section of rail. It landed in the lower quarry. Steve was alone. The minecart rolled to a stop beside a deep pit. Redstone ore lit the walls. Blood rain fell from the roof even though hundreds of stone blocks covered the cave. Something breathed behind him. Black hands entered his sight from both sides. Steve turned at once. The creature stood in the cart behind his. Its body was folded into a space too small to hold it. The red eyes blinked. The hands vanished, but the creature did not. It raised one finger to its lower mouth. Steve heard Tessa and Bram calling through the upper tunnels. The thing wanted him to answer. He stayed silent. The creature bent closer. Rain ran upward along its face. Its eyes moved from Steve to the deep pit. A white flash came from the far tunnel. Bram had fired a signal rocket. The creature turned toward it. Steve threw an ender pearl across the pit. He landed on the far ledge as the monster unfolded from the minecart. He ran toward the signal. Tessa and Bram met him at an old lift room. The third relay sat below them at the bottom of the quarry. Its red line rose through the stone like a beam. "The lift is broken," Tessa said. Bram looked into the shaft. "We can use water." Steve emptied a bucket over the edge. The stream fell to the bottom. They climbed down through it, one at a time. Red lightning struck somewhere above. The water flashed red, but did not vanish. At the bottom, the quarry opened into a round cave. The third eye floated over a platform of redstone blocks. 8 copper chains held it in place. A ring of pointed dripstone hung above. Bram opened his pack. "The chains will carry a blast into the eye. I place TNT around the platform. We light it from the lift shaft." "Will that break the whole cave?" Steve asked. "Only the part we are standing in." Tessa gave him a hard look. Bram managed a thin smile. "Then we should work quickly." They placed TNT on 4 sides of the platform. Steve ran redstone dust back to the water shaft. Tessa used the pickaxe on the red eye. It was stronger than the others. Each hit caused the blood moon's red light to pulse through the cave. The creature appeared on the roof. It crawled between the pointed dripstone upside down, the horns on its back cut through stone. Red eyes watched each person in turn. "Do not look up," Steve said. They kept working. The creature lowered one arm. It stopped beside Bram's head. He could not see it. Steve did. The hand opened, but it did not attack. It waited for Bram to notice. "3 steps left," Steve said quietly. Bram understood. He moved left without turning. The hand moved with him. Now look. Bram spun. The creature flashed across the cave. 5 seconds. Tessa struck the eye. 4. Bram connected the last TNT block. 3. Steve reached the water shaft. 2. Tessa ran behind him. 1. Bram pulled the lever. The roar and the blast came together. TNT broke the platform. Copper chains snapped. The third eye shattered under falling dripstone. A wave of stone and red dust pushed Steve and Tessa up the water shaft. Bram was still below. Steve looked down. Bram hung from the lowest ladder with half his hearts gone. Beneath him, the creature stood inside the fire. It had not taken any damage. One arm reached for his boot. Steve dropped Oren's pickaxe. Bram caught it with one hand and cut the ladder section below him. The loose rungs fell onto the creature. He climbed as black fingers closed around the empty space under his feet. The 3 survivors reached the upper track and blocked the shaft. On Tessa's map, only one red line remained. It led south through the open desert to the ruined portal in the canyon. Above them, the eclipse ring had narrowed. The white light around the blood moon was almost closed. The last page of the book changed again. When the ring shuts, the red night will have no morning. They followed the quarry rail south. It climbed through the mine and ended at a loading shed outside the village. The shed roof was gone. Red fog moved over the tracks, and slow blood rain fell into the empty carts. The world beyond had changed. The desert was no longer flat. Long black cracks crossed the sand. Some were 1 block wide. Others opened into deep caves filled with red light. Dead bushes had become tall black shapes with branches that looked like hands. The moon's red face covered almost all the white ring around the sun. Tessa checked the map. The canyon is 600 blocks south. Bram looked at his damaged chest plate. In this fog, that is a long walk. They took 3 horses from a stable beside the loading shed. The animals fought the leads and would not face south. Steve covered their eyes with leather caps. Once mounted, they moved, but the slowness effect touched them too. The survivors rode away from the village. Behind them, the creature climbed out of the mine. It rose from the broken shed roof and stood in the fog. Oren's and the other mob's deaths had given it a long hunt. The 3 broken eyes had not weakened it. If anything, the thing looked more solid beneath the blood moon. Steve kept the horse moving. He did not look back again. They passed groups of zombies standing still in the rain. Skeletons held bows but did not fire. Creepers faced the sky. Each time red lightning struck, every mob near the bolt vanished. The storm was killing its own night creatures as if clearing a road for something worse. Bram placed a copper rod on his saddle. It pulled south. "The last relay is stronger," he said. "I can feel it from here." The ground shook. A black arm landed beside Tessa's horse. The animal threw her into the sand. Steve turned his horse and reached for her, but the creature came through the fog on all 4s. Its upper jaw opened, the red eyes fixed on Tessa. The flash came. 5 seconds. Tessa stood and threw an ender pearl south. 4. Bram jumped from his saddle. 3. Steve slapped his horse and sent it running east as a decoy. 2. He threw his own pearl after Tessa. 1. Bram placed a copper rod and dropped a redstone torch beside it. The creature roared. Red lightning struck the rod. Bram's horse vanished. The blast threw Bram south, away from the creature. He landed near Steve and Tessa with one heart left. The three ran while the monster tore through the place where they had been. The canyon appeared as a dark cut in the desert. Stone stairs led down to a ruined portal. Half the obsidian frame stood against the canyon wall. Crying obsidian filled two corners. Red liquid ran from it and gathered in a pool beneath the frame. The last eye floated in the open center. It was larger than the other three. Red glass formed a square around a black pupil. The remaining line on Tessa's map ended at it. "Too easy," Steve said. Tessa opened the book. A new drawing covered the page. It showed a person breaking the eye. Behind the person, the portal opened like a mouth. Bram leaned against the wall and drank a healing potion. Easy was not the word I planned to use. The creature reached the canyon edge above them. Its arms spread from one side to the other. The red moon framed its horns. It did not climb down. It waited. Steve looked at the eye. "It wants us to break it." "The book told us to," Tessa said. The book also appeared inside our observatory after the storm started. Bram examined the redstone dust on the cover. "This dust came from my control room." The black pupil inside the eye moved toward him. Tessa closed the book. Then the creature wrote it. The ground shook again. The white ring around the blood moon became a thin line. "Trap or not, the eye is linked to the eclipse," Steve said. "We break it." He struck the glass with Oren's pickaxe. The first crack opened. The ruined portal lit with red light. Steve hit the eye again. The crack crossed the pupil. The creature began to climb down. On the third hit, the eye shattered. The portal opened. Red light pulled Steve, Tessa, and Bram off their feet. They flew through the frame before they could hold the stone. The canyon folded into a narrow line. Heat and darkness closed around them. Steve landed on Blackstone. He was in the nether, but not any nether he knew. The sky was red fog. Basalt pillars hung sideways over a sea of black lava. Crimson trees grew down from the roof. A blood moon floated above the lava, even though no moon should have existed in that place. The broken eye waited on a platform across a narrow bridge. It had rebuilt itself. Tessa stood beside Steve. Bram appeared a few blocks away. The portal behind them had no obsidian frame. It was a red square hanging in open air. "The eye was a door," Tessa said. Steve opened the book again. Every page was blank except the last. "The fourth eye does not face the world. It faces the fear beneath it." Bram pointed across the bridge. "Then that one is real." A black hand came through the red portal behind them. The creature followed. Its body changed as it entered the false nether. The black skin turned deep red. Its jaws glowed like hot iron. More limbs grew from its back and struck the ground around the survivors. It no longer crawled slowly. It came through at full speed. Steve looked at it. 5 seconds. They ran onto the bridge. 4. Tessa reached the far platform. 3. Bram placed TNT along the center of the bridge. 2. Steve joined Tessa. 1. Bram lit the redstone line. The creature roared. TNT exploded between them. The bridge broke into the black lava. The creature dropped with it, but its arms caught both sides of the gap. Its body hung over the lake. Bram had not crossed. He stood on the portal side with one block of bridge under his boots. "Jump," Steve shouted. Bram tried. The slowness effect held him. His jump fell short. He caught the edge of the platform with both hands. Steve reached down. Their fingers touched. A red limb rose from below and wrapped around Bram's waist. Bram looked at the eye behind Steve. Break it before the ring closes. The creature pulled. Steve held on, but Tessa saw the blocks under them cracking. If the monster climbed, all three would fall. Bram released Steve's hand. He dropped with the creature into the black lava. There was no white burst. No items rose. The red fog below covered both shapes. For a second, the whole place became quiet. Then the lava began to climb the walls. Steve and Tessa turned to the final eye. Oren's pickaxe had only a few uses left. Steve struck the red glass. Tessa placed blocks around the platform to hold back the rising lava. One hit. The blood moon above them grew larger. 2 hits. Cracks spread across the false sky. 3 hits. The black pupil looked down at Steve. Inside it, he saw the Red Mesa village under endless red rain. Every house was empty. The horned creature sat on top of the observatory, waiting for someone who would never come. 4 hits. The diamond pickaxe broke. The eye remained. Tessa gave Steve her iron pickaxe. Keep going. The creature rose from the lava. It climbed the broken bridge with Bram held against its chest. Bram's shape was dark and still. Red lines ran from him into the monster's body. Steve struck the eye again. The creature reached the platform edge. Tessa poured water toward it. The water vanished in the nether heat, filling the air with steam. For 1 second, the monster could not see through it. Steve hit the eye one final time. The red glass burst. The false nether split apart. The moon, lava, and basalt pillars became flat red pieces that flew into the dark. The creature dropped Bram and reached for Steve. Tessa grabbed Steve's arm as the red portal opened beneath their feet. They fell through together. Steve landed in the canyon pool. Tessa struck the sand beside him. The ruined portal went dark. Crying obsidian stopped leaking. On Tessa's map, the last red line vanished. Above them, the white ring opened. The blood moon began to move away from the sun. "We did it," Tessa said. Then a white burst flashed inside the dead portal. Bram's items spilled out onto the sand. The red light around the canyon did not fade. Blood rain still fell. The grey slowness mark remained over Steve's sight. A hand came through the empty obsidian frame. The creature pulled itself back into the world. The 4 eyes were gone, but the hunt was not over. The creature stepped through the ruined frame with Bram's red lines still burning across its chest. It seemed taller in the canyon. The upper jaw touched one wall. Its horns scraped the other. Steve saw the flash. 5 seconds. Tessa gathered Bram's pack, the supply rail. 4. They climbed the canyon stairs. 3. Steve threw an ender pearl to the top. 2. Tessa followed. 1. The roar filled the canyon. The creature came straight up the wall. It did not use the stairs. Its arms punched holes through red sandstone, while Steve and Tessa ran toward a small loading station near the rim. The station served an old rail line between the ruined portal and the village quarry. A furnace minecart waited on one track. 2 passenger carts sat behind it. Bram kept coal in an iron chest beside the rail. Tessa opened his pack. He has a fire charge. She used it on the furnace cart, added coal, and pushed. The engine began to move. Steve linked the passenger carts. They climbed in as the creature reached the rim. The train rolled north. At first it was too slow. The creature crawled beside them, one arm landing with each turn of the wheels. Steve fed more coal into the furnace cart. Speed built. The desert track crossed flat sand, then a wooden bridge over a dry river. Red lightning struck behind them. The creature passed through the bolt without slowing. The red light around it became brighter. Bram's death had fed it, just as the book warned. Tessa opened the last page. Fresh writing spread across it. The final death doubles the dark. No wall will hold it. No blade will stop it. Wait for the uncovered sun. She looked at the sky. The moon had moved a little farther. A white edge of sun showed on one side, but its light could not enter the red fog. "How long?" Steve asked. "Maybe 3 minutes." The creature caught the rear cart. Black fingers closed around the iron rim. The train slowed. Steve fired an arrow into the hand. The arrow broke. He poured water onto the track. The stream pushed under the creature's arm and loosened its grip for a moment. Tessa disconnected the rear cart. It rolled backward into the monster. The creature struck it aside, but the front cart gained 10 blocks. The rail climbed a hill. The furnace cart lost speed again. Steve saw the white bars of the creature's lower mouth rise behind Tessa. "Do not turn yet." The hands entered her sight. Now, she turned. The creature vanished from the track and appeared 50 blocks back. The silent shape had failed to close around her, but it had changed again. Its red eyes were gone. Its body lifted above the ground. The low, floating sound began. "Do not let it get close," Steve said. The no-eyed form moved slowly at first. Then the train reached the top of the hill and slowed for a bend. The creature rushed forward. Its open jaws came within 1 cart length. Steve threw a swiftness potion at the furnace cart. The glass broke across the engine. Blue rings wrapped around its wheels. It was not alive, but for a few seconds the strange potion touched everything in the splash. The cart sped down the far slope. The village lights appeared through the fog. The train crossed the final bridge. Red lightning hit a rail ahead. Iron pieces flew into the air. The furnace cart left the track and rolled into the sand. Steve and Tessa jumped before the passenger cart struck it. The crash threw them beside the library. The creature floated over the broken bridge. Steve opened the library door. The saved villagers remained in the cellar. They had blocked the trapdoor from below. Tessa knocked in the pattern she had taught them. The blocks moved, and pale faces looked up. "The eclipse is ending," she told them. "Stay below until normal sunlight reaches the road." An old villager pointed toward the observatory. "The big glass is moving." Steve looked through a side window. The observatory lens was turning by itself. It followed the blood moon. Red light passed through the cracked glass and swept across the village. like a beam from a lighthouse. Bram's control machine still had power. Tessa opened the map. Though all 4 relay lines were dark, a 5th red mark now glowed at the observatory center. The relays were not keeping the eclipse alive, she said. They were feeding the lens. Steve understood. The book made us break them so all their power would return to one place. The creature had not guarded the red eyes to save them. It had led the group from one to the next. Each broken relay had sent its stored energy back to the observatory. The final eye had opened a door for the creature's strongest form. The storm had used their fear and their actions to complete itself. Above the mesa, the white ring closed again. The blood moon stopped moving. "The main lens is holding it," Tessa said. "We have to shut down the control room." The creature reached the library wall. Steve gave the villagers all his stone blocks. "Seal the cellar." He and Tessa left through the rear window. They ran between houses while a black arm broke through the front. The mesa stairway began near the ruined well. Blood rain flowed down every step. The climb was more than 100 blocks. Slowness made each step feel twice as high. Tessa used Bram's last potion. They shared the splash and gained a little speed. The creature followed along the cliff face. Halfway up, red lightning struck the stairs. A section vanished. Steve placed blocks across the gap, while Tessa fired arrows at the monster's eyes. The arrows could not hurt it, but each hit made the red face pull away. They crossed. The observatory walls were broken open. The great lens turned above the roof, sending red light into the sky. Every remaining wire in the control room led to one block beneath the central lever. It was a 5th eye. This one was small and black, with a red pupil. "The true relay," Steve said. Tessa raised the iron pickaxe. The creature pushed its head through the control room wall. The flash covered their sight. 5 seconds. Tessa hit the eye. 4. Steve placed Bram's remaining TNT around the central panel. 3. Tessa struck again. 2. Steve set a redstone torch. 1. They jumped into the stairwell. The creature roared. TNT destroyed the control panel. The 5th eye broke. Redstone lines burst from the walls. The great lens stopped turning. The explosion also broke the stairs beneath Tessa. She fell to the lower floor. Steve landed on a ledge above her. The creature entered through the smoke and caught her before she could stand. "Steve Roof," she shouted. He drew his sword and jumped down. Tessa threw Bram's pack at him. It held the copper rods, redstone parts, and the map. Steve caught it, but the creature pulled Tessa toward its open jaw. He struck its arm. The diamond blade passed through black smoke and hit stone. Tessa looked at him once. "Make the lens face the sun." The creature's sharp limb drove through her. Her body vanished. The map fell from Steve's hands, and Tessa's marker disappeared from it. The monster turned toward him. Steve ran up the broken stairwell. Tessa's death sent a red pulse through the observatory. The chase would last even longer now. The creature climbed inside the walls, breaking a path beside him. Each black hand landed close enough to touch his armor. Steve reached the roof. The great lens was locked in place, still aimed at the blood moon. Its gears had no power. The edge of the sun showed behind the red square, but the moon did not move. Steve opened Bram's pack. He had 6 copper rods, 12 redstone blocks, 3 pistons, and 1 lever. It was enough for a simple drive. He placed pistons against the main gear. Redstone blocks powered them. The first push moved the lens one small step away from the blood moon. The sun's white edge grew. The creature climbed onto the roof. Steve pushed the lens again. The eclipse began to open. The monster stood to its full height. Red fog rolled from its body. The faces of Oren, Bram, and Tessa moved for a second inside its chest, then disappeared. Steve pulled the lever a third time. The lens turned toward the uncovered part of the sun. White light passed through the glass. It formed a narrow beam across the roof. The beam did not touch the creature. Steve needed to turn the lens one more step, but the last piston had broken. The monster looked at him. 5 seconds. Steve placed a copper rod beside the gear. 4. He ran redstone dust from the rod to the piston. 3. The creature opened both jaws. 2. Steve stood beside the rod and raised his sword toward the sky. 1. The roar began. Red lightning came down. It struck Steve's sword, jumped to the copper rod, and powered the final piston. His armor took most of the blast, but his hearts dropped to 1. The lens turned. Full sunlight hit the creature. The red body stopped above Steve. Its pointed arm rested against his helmet without moving. White light passed through every limb. The red eyes became clear glass. The jaws lost their color. The monster tried to pull away, but the lens held the beam on it. Cracks opened across the blood moon. The square red face broke into hundreds of dark pieces. They fell through the sky and faded before touching the world. The normal moon slid away from the sun. Blue sky returned around it. Blood rain became clear water. The red fog lifted from the village. The creature folded inward. Its many arms became 4, then 2, then none. The horns vanished. For 1 second, only the tall, broken jaws remained in the sunlight. Then they closed and disappeared. Steve fell beside the broken lens. When he woke, the square sun was low in a clean sky. The slowness mark had gone. Villagers were climbing the mesa stairs. The child from the library carried bread and a healing potion. Steve drank it and watched his hearts return. Oren, Bram, and Tessa did not return. Their beds remained empty. Steve collected the few items the storm had left and placed them in the observatory entrance. Oren's first stone pickaxe went beside the door. Bram's final copper rod stood on the roof. Tessa's map hung above the control room, its red lines now dark. Steve broke every lens, daylight sensor, and relay. He filled the ruined portal with stone. He sealed the quarry eye chamber and the village well. The red book would not burn, so he locked it in an obsidian box beneath the desert temple. The work took 9 days. During that time, Steve found signs that the storm had started long before the moon crossed the sun. The first sign was under the observatory roof. When villagers helped him remove the broken gears, they uncovered a narrow space between 2 stone floors. Someone had crawled through it and carved 4 pictures into the blocks. The first showed the village well. The second showed the quarry. The third showed the ruined portal. The fourth showed Steve standing beneath the main lens. The carvings were old enough to be covered in dust. Steve had built the observatory only 2 weeks earlier. The second sign was inside Bram's control room. One wall held a simple recorder made from repeaters and redstone lamps. Bram had used it to mark each drop in sunlight during the eclipse. Most of the lamps had broken, but the record remained in a written book inside the machine. The first loss of light had not happened when the moon touched the sun. It had happened at midnight, 6 nights earlier. At that exact time, Steve had been alone on the mesa, placing the first blocks for the lens platform. He remembered hearing a low breath behind him. He had blamed the wind and kept working without turning. The record showed another loss of light 3 nights later. That was when Oren found red glass in the quarry and brought it to the observatory. He thought it was a new kind of ore. Bram had cut the glass into 4 pieces and placed one at each relay to test how it carried light. The pieces had not come from the quarry. Steve and 2 villagers searched the pit where Oren claimed to have found them. The redstone wall there was solid. No hole, chest, or glass remained. Only a line of black marks crossed the floor, shaped like long fingers dragging a block toward the lift. The creature had placed the red glass for them. It had watched Bram connect the relays. It had watched Tessa map the moon. It had watched Steve build a lens strong enough to hold the eclipse in place. By the time the blood moon rose, the machine was already a trap. The 4 friends had not caused the storm on purpose, but each of them had built one part of it. Steve returned to the desert temple and opened the obsidian box once more. The red book lay inside. Its warning pages were blank. A new message covered the center page. You made the eye. You gave it a road. You looked up when it asked. The next page showed the 4 friends on the observatory roof. Oren, Bram, and Tessa had been crossed out in black. Steve's figure remained. Behind him stood a narrow horned shadow. He closed the book and added a second layer of obsidian. The last sign appeared at the village bell. When Steve lifted it back onto its stand, he found a red block hidden beneath the base. It was not an eye. It was a small copy of the blood moon, no larger than an apple. It broke when sunlight touched it. Inside was a folded scrap from Tessa's map. She had written on it before climbing the mesa for the eclipse. Steve, something has been following your marker for 6 nights. I did not tell you because I thought my map was broken. Below the message she had drawn 2 red points. One was marked Steve. The other followed 3 blocks behind. Steve placed the scrap beside Tessa's full map in the observatory entrance. He understood then that the blood moon had not brought the creature to Red Mesa. It had only allowed a thing already stalking him to become large enough for everyone else to see. Asphyxiation had been part of his shadow before the eclipse ever began. For a month, the sky stayed normal. Then another eclipse crossed a far corner of the world. It was small and harmless. The moon covered only part of the sun. No blood rain fell, no red fog rose. Steve watched from inside the library with every shutter closed. When the light returned, the child villager brought him Tessa's old map. A new red point had appeared on it. It was not at the observatory, the well, the quarry, or the portal. It moved with Steve. He stepped left. The point moved left. He crossed the room. It followed. Then a second point appeared 3 blocks behind the first. Outside, the day was bright. There was no storm and no red moon. Still, every villager in the library turned toward the space behind Steve. He saw black hands enter the sides of his sight. Steve turned before they could close. Nothing stood there. On the map, the second red point rose over his shoulder and covered the first. Far beneath the desert temple, something inside the obsidian box opened two bright red eyes.